Jai Jai Shankara, Hara Hara Shankara. A very good evening, good morning, wherever you are across the world. Thank you so much for giving us a second opportunity to come and engage with you. I want to start by saying how grateful we are for the active engagement that we got both during the session and after the session, and so many ideas, thoughts, blessings, and feedback that we are very, very grateful for. We are most excited that we were able to trigger a thought process and a conversation in your own homes, in your own groups about this whole question about Thanksgiving as a topic, but more importantly, Rinam as the core idea around our Sanatan Dharma. Just wanted to rewind back 30 seconds to saying why we connected the two, to say that while the Western world has a lovely concept of Thanksgiving celebration that happens once a year, our entire Sanatan Dharma's core is built around the concept of gratitude, rinam, or debt. It's like they say in English, I owe you. There are many things we owe. From the fact that we don't actually have anything to do with our own birth or our life cycle of learning or our journey, the fact that someone somewhere contributed to everything that we do today. It's no different from how people like Bharat and another distinguished panelists that we have, Badri, who are all in the research field. When they do their research, they always tend to acknowledge those before them who created some of the baseline information, theorems, or thesis based on which they progress further and build further and give us newer or better things. Or the very acknowledgement an Elon Musk gave to the great Nikola Tesla to acknowledge their contribution and a variety of other things that we all do. But gratitude is so inherent in our ethos. It's so inherent in the Sanatan Dharma. And we thought we will take a second session to cover the entire topic, which as last time we realized was got so interesting that we were barely able to cover half. Before we actually run into the session today and do a little bit of rewind, I wanted to bring to your attention the core idea or the thing that binds us together as a group. And that is Periva and his first appearance in New Jersey with his own presence that he will grace us with at the Manimandapam in New Jersey. I have the opportunity to share with you the exciting progress that we are seeing with Periva's grace. We have actually made significant progress, and you will be able to see a glimpse of that in the video. And we'll be grateful for your participation in whatever manner as Periva makes his presence here and gives us an opportunity to build our generations anchored in the United States and various parts of the world through his presence and grace. I would request if we can play the Manimandapam current state video, please.
Chandrasekhara Sadgurunada Chandrasekhara Sadgurunada Hara Hara Shankara Jaya Jaya Shankara 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 Hara Hara Shankara Hara Hara Shankara Jaya Jaya 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 Shankara Hara Hara Shankara Hara Hara Shankara Jaya Jaya Shankara Hara Hara Shankara Hara Hara Shankara Jaya Jaya 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 Shankara Hara Hara Shankara Hara Hara Shankara Jaya Jaya Shankara Hara Hara Shankara Hara Hara Shankara
Thank you so much. If you have the other video, you can play it now. Otherwise, we will start. Okay. So it's time to welcome all our panelists. What you saw is a little glimpse of the lovely temple that's actually coming up in Flemington, New Jersey. And we are all very excited as it has taken shape with a lot of effort from all those who've kind of engaged us today in this conversation and given us this platform. Aarti, Suri, and the entire team, thank you so much for kind of making this happen and bringing Periva into kind of more physical proximity for all of us. So let's rewind back and focus on the session. I started the topic again to kind of connect us back. We talked about gratitude and the various components of gratitude and the kind of people or components that we don't express our gratitude to. I just want to recollect last time we said, even this whole experience that we're having today, right? There are so many people and participants and technologies and various forces that made this possible today. But we don't start this discussion by saying thank you to all of them. We don't thank our wireless router maker and we don't thank the person who invented the internet. But in our ethos in the Sanatana Dharma, they say it's important to acknowledge. And it's important to acknowledge every force, animate, inanimate, physical, metaphysical, today or omnipresent, right? All of those we need to pay our gratitude to in various forms. And that is something that are expressed to us through various rituals, some daily, some less frequent, which kind of bring it all together. So let's go back to the topic of Rinam. Now, I request Bharat to kind of trigger our memory back on the first two Rinams that we covered, and from there on, take the story forward. We also have today Badri, who has joined us, and Badri is someone again who brings a very, very interesting perspective. He's an assistant professor at Shastra, he's a robotics expert, so he understands the lovely trade-off between science and faith and the conjunction of that. One of the feedbacks that we had discussed last time that we received from all of you is where does that line between science and faith kind of, is there a trade-off? Does it blur? Why is it that on some topics there is enough science and on some there isn't? And you all know that there are stories, right? Even the great Albert Einstein story about how he talked about, he knew everything that was there to know, but he knew very little about what was there to know. And the fact that there was some force beyond us that had triggered what he had understood and expressed, his theory of various theories, including relativity. So the important thing is that there is that point of what we say unproven as yet in science. And I started by saying that last time, saying there is a lot of what we think is myth and what we think is beliefs. But the reality is many of those components science has caught up with today and has rational explanations for. But not all of those components have the rational explanation or the ability of science to have comprehended. And we'll keep discussing this because the whole concept last time that we discussed was how do we bridge this with the level of knowledge that we have, but with the level of thinking and contemplation that God has given us through our minds and intellect, and try and build those bridges and understand that whether we believe in it rationally or a certain level, pure faith and irrational, let's at least make sure that we practice with pride and not have prejudices or biases about these beliefs that we have. So rather than do that, let's actually practice them while we have the opportunity to discover science and relate to them. With that, Bharat, I will pass it on to you to kind of reconnect us back with the topic from last time.
Thank you, Karthik sir. Namaskaram to all. So what I'll do is probably recap for our listeners today. So where we are. So let me share my screen real quick. So we began with our core belief in Sanatana Dharma. So let me go on present mode. Sorry, second. Yes. So we began and we were inspired by this video in Periyava Puranam, and we began with the core belief that so our life is filled with a lot of disorders and uncertainties characterized by high entropy. And our goal with the human life as a gift is moving towards this no entropy or moksha state. And by being grateful to different factors that have contributed to existence, sustenance, as well as creation of this life, we tend to go towards this no entropy state. And so we saw different Rinams as part of this gratitude for this gift that is life. We started with discussing Devaranam to the divine and Rishiranam to our gurus. And there we spoke about our indebtedness to our gurus and how this MahaPeriyava Manimandapam is itself an embodiment of our indebtedness. And I would see even the discussion as an ability for us to talk about how much of gratitude we owe. And then as final part of the discussion, we spoke about Pitru Rinam, where Shivaraman Mama shared a lot of interesting experiences from his life and related it to this this idea. So today we wanted to continue this discussion with two other concepts that we left out last time, which is Bhutaranam and Manavaranam. So Bhutaranam, so I wanted to include both flora and fauna, which is nature, different aspects of nature, as well as other living beings to whom we are indebted in many ways. And we are part of this ecosystem and we owe to them, being just one part of it. And also Manavaranam, which is to other fellow beings who have also been handed over the gift of life. A human life, I mean. So interestingly, when I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about and reflecting upon our discussions last time, so one thing came up, right? We spoke about this entropy and how this whole life of being filled with gratitude in itself addresses our ability to reduce entropy. And the best example I could think of is, I mean, if you look at Bhutaranam, like being thankful to nature and living in harmony with nature in itself, and we will be talking about it in detail, reduces entropy in a big way. So today our folks in Chennai are facing like massive rains, and we are seeing a lot of different areas getting flooded. And we are also faced with many natural disasters, and if you analyze the core reason behind them, seems like our exploitation of nature rather than harmony with nature results in these disasters, and these disasters are in turn big level disturbances or disorders or entropy. And so this Bhutaranam, being thankful, connects very well to the idea of reducing entropy, external entropy. And if you look at Manavaranam, this being ability to see others as manifestation of the same divine and being involved in different activities that constitute Manavaranam, you reduce your internal entropy. And I think that will be the core of our discussion when we come to this topic. So this is sort of what we will be looking at. And before we move ahead, we have, as Karthik sir introduced our new panelist, Shri Badri, Dr. Badri. So maybe if he could weigh in on some thoughts that he had about our previous discussion. After that, we can take it forward to our today's discussion.
Thanks, Bharat. I hope I'm audible. Last session, the way it was summarized was very nice, very interesting points. The trigger point being entropy, science, where do we reconcile science and our rituals? All those questions which continuously possess our mind. What I'm trying to share is hardly any of my perspectives or my knowledge. Whatever I'm able to say, whatever I will refer to today will involve Sivan sir's any particular Mandakal. I have searched for answers many places and finally settled with Sivan sir's book. And after that, I have not had any longing or craving to search it anywhere else. So I owe that debt of gratitude to that treasure trove of knowledge that is any particular Mandakal. I also start by expressing my gratitude both to Shivaraman Mama and Bharat, without whom I don't think I would have known about Periva. And interestingly, the video that Bharat shared was the video which Mama referred to, which connected science and which had quantum physics and things like that, which immediately intrigued a person of my background who was unwilling to believe anything that has not been scientifically proven. So that video was the only video which could have triggered me, and that was how the entire Periva experience came to me. So to whether first to think about it at a broader perspective, should we try to reconcile science and rituals? There is a little bit of a dichotomy there, because science, I believe there was a convention, I do not, I'm just trying to recall this from memory, I do not have the exact dates and who were the people involved, but there was when quantum science was taking off and Einstein was coming up with this relativity theory, and there was Max Planck and all those very famous scientists, they were all gathered together at a convention. There was a question on whether science should pursue things which it cannot observe, which it cannot see. And the overwhelming response was no, it should only concern itself with the observations that it's able to make. And therefore, it narrows its scope down. That is why they say physics and metaphysics as something beyond physics. That the purport of science is not to concern itself with things unobservable. And that since that has been the agenda that has been set by very popular scientists of yesteryears, that continues to be its direction. If it had been harmonized in some way with the unobservable as well, because the unobservable does not reflect in our day-to-day activities as grossly as what the observable parameters do. But if it had tried to bring that also under its purview, then it might have been a good direction where we could have reconciled both. But unfortunately or fortunately, it did not choose that as its agenda. It went ahead with the observations, and these observations are primarily linked with, if you thought about it, linked with survival questions. So things that will give me food, will give me things that I want, and all those are become the concerns of scientific research, engineering research. There is nothing that is trying to go beyond all of those. Therefore, the reconciliation of science with rituals will always, in my view, remain. And one should not try to fit a square plug in a round hole too much. There will definitely be observations that you can do which are undeniable, like Shivram Mama quoted some examples where these are observable. If you did it and you do not know why, if you concerned yourself with feeding the Pitrus, then if you brought it under the purview of science and pursued it scientifically, you would get observations which are repeatable. But there is it is not under consideration right now. So that's one thing. The concept of entropy, which Periva spoke about in that video, is I think after a while that I've heard something that links Periva with these topics, though he must have spoken a lot. I have not had occasion to listen to it, but entropy as a way to entropy as a measure of disorder, and humans having the capability to bring down their disorder was indeed very refreshing. And to link it with Thanksgiving, gratitude, debt are all very wonderfully done. In fact, there is a slide by Bharat where he says no entropy, then moksha. And I do not know how much of thought went into it, but there is actually something very deep in that particular word he has used, moksha and disorder, which when I get to Nandavanam, I'll try to link those two. But as I've said, what I say mostly will be reflections from Sivan Sir's book. And Sivan Sir calls life as itself a debt. So Piravi Kadan, as he says, that is the word he uses. Not for humans alone, also for any life form that is being born. It is born to discharge some debt, and giving thanks, having gratitude, indebtedness, and debt. What debt? The debt is itself coming from the fact that we have so many things to repay as a result of the sins, mistakes, unintentional mistakes that we have done, and doshas that we have accumulated. We have debts to repay, and these lives are basically those debts that are executing themselves. And in addition to this, he also says there are more elevated debts to repay, which is to actually approach the divinity and surrender oneself. These are also debts that man must pay at a suitable time, not at any time before that, but at a suitable time he should discharge of these debts. So these debts, thinking of debts as a way as being part of our entire life, and executing all our karmas with that in mind is something very uniquely related to our culture. And he says that Turavis and Jnanis, the two most highest stages, they are the only ones who come with no debt. Until that point, you have different types of debts, and you keep paying those debts off. That must be the fundamental purpose of your life. And as beautifully put in the last time, Sandhya Vandanam as one, but I'm not exposed to many other yagas, yajnas or anything, but Sandhya Vandanam or any ritual that has been suggested seems to be repaying debts. That seems to be the fundamental core of all these activities. When you give Navagraha Argyam, or you give Argyam to the sun, or you through Brahma Yajnam you satisfy Devrishi Pitrus. So all of these have been framed in a way for us to pay the debts to the unobservable. And whether science acknowledges it at this point or at a later point or never, these have been structured in a way by people who have been able to transcend our limited levels of vision, and that is why we owe a huge debt to the rishis for being able to tell things about astrology if you want, things about astronomy if you want, by nothing but pure intuition and transcending the limits of observed knowledge, observable, sensorily measured quantities, to go beyond all of that. For that, we owe a debt of debt. So this is sort of what I wanted to say for the last session. So let me hand it over back to.
In fact, Badri, at that point, I just want to kind of add a little bit of texture to the lovely takeaways that you put. And I want to say, as we are doing, and last time you were not there, I was describing this whole thing is, we run a little session called Cool for the youngsters, right? And the whole idea is to build that bridge. And one of the fundamental questions from our children is always, where is the science behind it? And so what, right? Those are the kind of questions. And to think about what you just said, which is in the bridge, there is some observable, some not observable, or not yet observed. But the fact is, when we look at the ecosystem as explained in our astronomical view in the Vedas, which by admission of current scientists, right, and current traceability theories is at least, several thousand years away. The fact is that did have a very clear description of what we call the Navagraha, right, in an ecosystem that used to circle around, and there was an interconnectedness. And of those 9, the 2 are the lunar nodes, right, which scientifically are perfectly proven today, 3.5, 4,000 years later, since at least the acknowledged, availability of Vedas, right, proves that in between there must have been generations and generations and generations of people who laughed at this, even laughed at the fact that Earth was circular, right, and a sphere, not flat, and laughed at the fact that, what are you talking about, some life up there or some ocean up there or some relationship between planets up there. All of those things over a period of empirical knowledge that was sitting there, rishis or otherwise, that had been captured for us, is coming back to some level of clarity and granularity today. So to say that a rest of it that's sitting there need not have a scientific basis is where that gap is, right? And that is what we keep reminding the children, that there is combinations of those things that are today proven, right? And to the point, we say astronomical beliefs, and we not only talk about 9 planets, we took them through the 27 nakshatras, right? And the scientific connection to 27 nakshatras or the lunar angles, right? Which very beautifully describe not only that, but the fact that Rohini and the extent of extra time that shadow casts, and therefore the correlation to the story of Rohini being the favorite wife, right? It's somewhere in our power of vision that our seers had, or sages had, or those scientists of that time, as you would call them, had. They converted that into modules which were relatable in simple, relatable stories, because it was easier to tell it as a story rather than to make scientific observations be remembered, because that was very tough for the average human being to comprehend. And I think that gap or that approach is even followed today when science is converted to stories and we see a variety of new stories coming through. So it's about how it was shared to simplify, not necessarily the lack of science or the lack of understanding. And as you beautifully put it, how we can bring the rational together and bridge it in our minds and allow it to fester so that we can contemplate and believe in it is, I think, the important point. So thanks for bringing that. You articulated it much better than all of us did. So thanks. I mean, I love the fact that you.
And one point when you were I'm sorry for interrupting. So one point when you said that stories are told because of the people's potentially lack of understanding, there is another aspect, another benefit to communicating through a story. It stands time, so it transcends time. If you write it as a scientific document, after a point of time, people do not understand that language, and it falls out of use. But a story is easily communicated generation after generation in whatever language that is available. That is why we retain so much of our knowledge through certain stories.
I'm with you, Badri, and at some other day, maybe not today, but we will talk about the power of the oral transmission. That science again is today starting to understand the fact that it was, our super understanding of electromagnetic wave and sound and light as a combination, and therefore the fact that we made it oral in transmission, so that the delivery of the tone creates the reduction in entropy that Periva talked about. With each of these conversations, we can see the connecting dots. As Steve Jobs will say, that everything is interconnected. Sometimes we get to see interconnectedness in our experiences. So we will get there. But yeah, for another day. I'll give it back to Bharat right now.
Excellent. So let's probably dive right into the agenda of today. So begin with our, so I'll probably share as well. Sorry, am I sharing?
Yes.
Okay. So Bhutaranam. So I wanted to take it into two forms, like flora and fauna, as I mentioned. So maybe begin with a very fundamental concept of flora, which is like trees and plants. And very interestingly, this concept of ecology, or Vedic version, Vedic aspect of ecology, has been coming with us for ages and ages together in different, in different mentions and in different ways. So to cite some examples that when I researched for this, so for example, even for somebody with very limited knowledge of Vedas, if we take Sri Rudram or Sri Suttam, so there is mention of divine manifestation in Vriksha, right? Like Namo Vanyayacha. So he is in the forest. Kakshayacha, he is in the bushes. So the divine manifestation being found in everything that represents the flora is that recurring theme occurs in Vedas. And when you go to Upanishads again, this theme resurfaces, where many allegories of or symbolisms are mentioned through these trees. Like just like how a tree gives its fruits for somebody plants the tree and the fruits go on for generations later. The Taittiriya Upanishad talks about how your punya karma benefits people that come later in upcoming generations. Right? So the symbolism as well as this respect for tree has existed through through ages, and even in contemporary among contemporary saints. So something really touched my heart, which is Vallalar's saying. He looks at crop that is getting decayed, and he writes a line. He says, "Vadiya pairai kandabodellam vadinen." So he feels so sad at looking at a crop getting decayed. He is able to relate himself with it, and he is able to see the same manifestation that is in him present in that crop as well. So this theme keeps repeating from the Vedic period to today's contemporary period, and it has been instituted in the form of practices in our life. So maybe I want to give it to Shivaraman Mama, so சார் இந்த விஷயத்த ரொம்ப ரொம்ப வந்து இம்பார்ட்டன்டான ஒரு இடத்துல வச்சிருக்காரு, நந்தவன கைங்கரியம் அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு. அண்ட் அதோட வேல்யூ வந்து ரொம்ப இதுவா வச்சிருக்கு. அது லிவிங் பை எக்ஸாம்பிளா சாரும் நந்தவன கைங்கரியத்தை திருவெங்காடுல வந்து லீட் பண்ணியிருக்காரு. ஸோ அதை பத்தி நீங்க கொஞ்சம் ஷேர் பண்ணிக்கணும். மியூட்ல இருக்கேன்.
Namaskaram. Sir is very particular about Nandavanam. Sir, when he wrote about Govinda Dikshidhar, he has mentioned, see, Govinda Dikshidhar has finished all his karmas. He has finished all the runas. We can say like this. There is no runa for Govinda Dikshidhar. for him to attain his fulfillment, except only one thing. He said the celestial persons who came and met Govinda Dikshidhar told Govinda Dikshidhar, you have left only one karma unfinished. That is Nandavana Kainkaryam. So it is very important that you have to finish that Kainkaryam. After that only Sri Govinda Dikshidhar formed one very big Nandavanam for Mahalinga Swami of Tiruvadai Marudu. That place is called Govindapuram even today. That was created by Govinda Dikshidhar, a Nandavanam for Tiruvadai Mahalinga Swami. After that he attained the moksha. Any human being, whatever dharma they do, one of the important aspects they have to finish is Nandavana Kainkaryam. So Sir himself did that Nandavana Kainkaryam in two places to the best of my knowledge. One is at Trivengadu, other one is at Kumbhakonam. Now, inspired by Sri Sivan Sir, his devotee by name Supuni, day before yesterday and yesterday, he went to Parvatamalai and planted 3,50,000 seeds. Some 2 years back, he planted nearly 75,000 seeds. Now we are able to see all these seeds grown up, and they are small plants, and certain things that has come up to 2 feet or 3 feet. See, you leave alone all the spiritual aspects. I am always worried about the youngest generation, the generation which is coming up, which is more interested with this science, and they want everything to be proved through science. Yes, it is our responsibility to learn for ourselves first, because we do not know. It is not only for kids, it's for us also, because we do not know. We should know, and we should make them to know. Leave alone all the spiritual aspects, all the religious aspects. We need trees just for rain. So planting these seeds, growing the trees, and not cutting the trees, it is basically essential for the human to live. So even if you see highly materialistic point of view, for the human race to survive, trees are very important. In our rishis, they have put it everything in the aspects of Papam and Punyam. The whole humanity was controlled or guided by only two words in this dharma, Papam and Punyam. That is enough. Not the police, not the rulers, not the courts, judgments. These are all important in this country. These two words are enough, Papam and Punyam. That made our people to look into the life, whether it is useful to others. Useful to others na Punyam. நமக்கே நாமே வாழ்ந்துட்டு இருக்கோம்னா அது பாபம், முடிஞ்சு போச்சு லைஃப். ஸோ சார்னுடைய எம்பசைஸ், மகான்களுடைய எம்பசைஸ் ஒரு சின்ன சின்ன விஷயத்துல இருந்தது, அது சொசைட்டிக்கு யூஸ்ஃபுல் ஆச்சு. அதுல சார் ரொம்ப எம்பசைஸ் பண்ணது நந்தவனம். இதுல ரொம்ப எம்பசைஸ் பண்ணது என்னன்னா, நந்தவனத்துல எந்தெந்த ட்ரீஸ் இருக்கணும் அப்படிங்கறத எம்பசைஸ் பண்ணியிருக்காரு. அது சார் எம்பசைஸ் பண்ணல, சாஸ்திரத்துல இருக்கு அப்படின்னு சொல்லியிருக்காரு. பிகாஸ் now we can understand this karveli, I think it in the mullu chedi, veli karvein solvar. It is so dangerous to the society. So maram valakkuradhu is not important, chedi valakkuradhu is not important. Endha chedi valakkuramங்கிறது important, endha maram valakkuramங்கிறது important. மனுஷல்ல ஒரு பேட் எலிமெண்ட் வளர்ந்துட்டே இருந்து நல்லா ஹெல்த்தியா இருந்தா இஸ் இட் குட் ஃபார் தி சொசைட்டி? அதே மாதிரி மரங்கள்லயும் செடிங்கள்லயும் எது good for the society, good for the human being, good for the living being. Ada valakanam. I remember one thing. I can relate it with my personal example also. Very close relation of mine had cancer. So we have decided to shift from Chennai to a village. We lived in that village with that cancer patient. It was a recurrence. Everyone should understand the recurrence is more dangerous than the first instant. The recurrence mother, the doctor has told there is no other way that she has to go for surgery. Up it was decided not to go for surgery, do something else. So with the cancer patient, we went to a village and we stayed there. And in that place, there was a Nandavanam and a Goshala. So our daily routine was to have the Gomutram, go urine, and do the service in the Nandavanam. You believe me, I have all the records with me. I got the records and I'm keeping it with me. The lesion, 1.5 centimeter lesion, cancer in this jaw, it was reduced to 50% without any other medicine, no allopathic medicine. After that, after 3 months of the examination in the Cancer Institute in Chennai, Dr. Shastri was by the name Dr. Shastri, very senior most man, and Dr. Krishnamurthy, the founder's son. They examined and they said it is in the Kadugu Mari or size. After 3 months, the examination report is available. They said maybe a scar. I was so surprised when she was given some homeopathy medicine. I asked them, what is the medicines, என்ன சொல்லுவா அந்த ingredients எல்லாம் என்ன போட்டிருக்காங்க. They take essence from the flowers. அந்த essence இந்த சின்ன சின்னதா இருக்கிற இந்த சக்கரை மாத்திரையில விட்டு then they give these homeopathy medicines. The homeopathy medicine base flowers. When you are moving in the Nandavanam, smelling the flowers, automatically Sivan sir has written நீண்ட கால நோய்கள் குணமாகும் அப்படின்னு எழுதியிருக்காங்க. So we are not able to understand a lot of things. That doesn't mean it is not available. It is there. We are not able to understand. நமக்கு பெனிஃபிட் பார்த்துட்டா போருமே. எனக்கு யாராவது போறது நல்ல ஃபர்ஸ்ட் கிளாஸ் அல்வா கலரி கொடுக்குறான்னா மை ஆட்டிடியூட் இஸ் சூப்பரா இருக்கு அல்வா, சாப்பிட்டு நான் பாட்டு போயிட்டே இருப்பேன். அந்த அல்வாக்கு நீ என்ன போட்ட, எப்படி வந்தது, இதெல்லாமே யாரோ ஒருத்தர் கஷ்டப்பட்டு பண்ணிட்டு இருக்காளே, சாப்பிட்டுட்டு போயிட்டு இருக்க வேண்டியதுதானே. திஸ் இஸ் மை ஆட்டிடியூட். மேபி எவரிபடி இஸ் நாட் லைக் தட், பட் ஸ்டில் அல்வாவை சாப்பிட்றத நிறுத்த வேண்டாங்கிறேன். எனக்கு அந்த இதெல்லாம் தெரிஞ்சாதான் அல்வாவை சாப்பிடுவேன்னு. ஒய் வேஸ்ட் டைம்? யூ கெட் சம் பெனிஃபிட், get that benefit and do the research. First, I will do the research. Then if it is convinced, proved, then only venda. Easiest way, reap the benefit and try to probe into it. This is my way of thinking.
So thank you mama. Actually நீங்க சொன்னதுல ஒரு interesting thing add ஆச்சு. நம்ம in the context of this discussion I wanted to, when I started about this whole Bhutaranam, I spoke about entropy as some other disorder of natural disaster மாதிரி ஒரு டிசார்டருக்கு இந்த ரிணத்தை செலுத்துறதுனால அந்த என்ட்ராப்பியும் நம்ம குறைக்கணும், எக்ஸ்டர்னல் என்ட்ராப்பியை குறைக்கணும்னு. நீங்க சொன்ன பாயிண்ட்ல நம்மளோட டிசீஸே ஒரு என்ட்ராப்பி.
அது எனக்கு இப்ப நீங்க சொன்னோடனே ஒண்ணு ஞாபகம் வரும். ஐ எம் சாரி டு இன்டர்ஃபியர் வித் யுவர் இது. நான் மறந்து போயிடுவேன், அதுக்காக வேற ஒண்ணும் இல்லை. இது ரொம்ப இம்பார்ட்டன்ட். என்னன்னா நம்ம ரிணத்தை செலுத்துறதுனால எப்படி நேச்சர் நமக்கு ஹெல்ப் பண்றது அப்படின்னு. இது டோட்டலி மெட்டாபிசிக்கல். இத நம்பனா நல்லது, அவ்வளவுதான். நம்மளேன்னா நல்லது இல்லை, அவ்வளவுதான். ஒரு இன்சிடென்ட் சொல்றேன். I think I told in the last session, I don't remember. If I have told already, you just tell me, I will stop it. Let us not waste the time. Annabhishekhamnu MahaPeriyava has started. Sonnena?
Right.
So,
you mentioned.
So that is one of the very important things.
Right.
Oh, so that is one of the very important aspects. Okay, you carry on.
So, I just want to, Bharat, I want to interfere for 30 seconds. There are lots of lovely comments that are coming our way, right? And while you are all running on it, I took a sneak peek at some of the comments, and I want to bring a couple of those, thought processes into this. So, a couple of comments. One, I thought, people have kind of added texture. They're talking about the fact that in the current context of COVID, right, we all talk about steam inhalation and whatever, right? That in no way is different from what you were just talking about. Shivraman Mama was talking about the experience of the Nandavanam and the various fragrances and the impact of that on our body, right? So there is a scientific explanation and procedure today, which is inhalation, but the actual natural way of doing that, which of course, if we question if there is a science behind it, there is very much a science behind it, right? There is a fragrance that is then carried by the in whatever wave form or whatever form, particle form through the air into our nose and then decomposed, and it kind of goes back. So I think that's important. The other comment that came in and a question, and at some point of time we can cover in the conversation, is Bharat, on your comment about Rudram. One of the questions that was asked is, so is Rudram a body, a person, a human being, or is it, and what is it? So I think as we discuss, and each one of us has our own personal perspective on some of these things, I just thought I'll bring in some of the comments as well to connect the conversation, right? And make sure that we are touching some of those very beautiful takeaways that people are adding already, because the intention of the conversation is for them to add more. And Bharat, to your last comment about, is the body in entropy and is disease a form of entropy? I would just extend that, in school, we've always said everything in our Sanatana Dharma Shastras or scriptures covers from the individual, the physical, to the, family and society, to the ecological, and to the spiritual. So if you take down that same conversation lens, you went to the individual, but if you think about the state of mind, the entropy, that is also the spiritual opening or the connection. So I wanted to actually bring it up at the wrap up, but since you pointed it out, I want to say that is what Periyava was talking about, because if you connect back the concept of science, if at the lowest entropy you are in the most solid state, it means you are least disturbed, and therefore, back to the Heisenberg principle, both velocity of action as well as position are identified and stable, right? It means it's the least dissonance of state, right? In some ways, Periyava was talking about the mind being in that state and ready to be actually making that transition rather than constantly being in the gaseous state where we are clouded with 20,000 thoughts at the same moment, and we are therefore kind of in the helter-skelter that we do. So I just want to bring that back and pass it back to you.
So, as you mentioned, sir, from the comment, actually, it's a very valid point. So, I had worked a bit on during my research days to explore this area. Intranasal administration of drugs is one of the areas, and so my boss used to joke that he used to say, "Smell the coffee." Is a statement we all use, right? Like, because the intranasal area is very easy to reach the brain. It's a very porous area and it's easy to reach the brain. So that's a very, very valid way of drug delivery to the brain, and in the form of an aerosol. So that's a very interesting take on it. I wanted to move this a little forward, and I think so. We had discussed enough about the concept of flora, and wanted to add one more. So, which is actually something fundamental to our belief as well as our prayer, which is rivers. So, our reverence to rivers, and again, this is a very age-old concept, and we treat them as our mothers, and we remember them. We remember the 7 rivers in our everyday prayers, so even like something like a festival, let's say like Deepavali, the first thing somebody asks in a traditional family is Ganga Snana Macha, right? Like the rivers are intertwined with our lives, just like in the old Vedic period, even today, right? In some form or the other. Now, so maybe I'll begin with Karthik sir on this. The concept. So you had a wonderful experience last year. You had gone to India to experience Brahmaputra Pushkar, if I'm right. And you spoke to me personally about like how you felt and the significance of the festival. And this is also a concept that we have as our ability to pay gratitude to these holy rivers that are our lifeline. We have instituted them. So before that, quickly, one thing that came to my mind, and again I should. So when we were talking about this vriksham, so there was one concept that Periyava always actually as a practice, an age-old practice that he wanted people to continue, which I had the personal opportunity to do with my grandmother, and I'm remembering it now, which was on Somavara Amavasya day, we go around the banyan tree. And I think we do like 108 circumambulations of the tree. So today, when I'm thinking about it, the significance of that, either from a gratitude perspective as well as from a medical benefit, I'm starting to understand. And typically, these trees are in temples. And so, how this whole ecosystem is connected around our, our spiritual life is fascinating to me. And I think it's a tradition even followed even today. In Chennai and in many places in India, and hopefully people listening to this from Florida will have the opportunity to do this in their respective towns as well. And maybe that's a tradition that we can continue there as well, and because they are blessed with the temperature for a banyan tree. So with that, I'll give it to you, sir, and please share your.
Thank you, Bharata. It has been quite a journey for me, right? And we were talking about children. I can tell you that I am as much like Dr. Badri, a kind of the bias for if there is a reason, only then I will believe. That's how I grew up. And there have been many personal experiences that have transformed it. But one of the ones that we are just discussing is the power of, some of our rituals, and the Pushkaram that I had the opportunity to experience last year. And as we speak, it just finished this year, right? It coincides with, or it is celebrated at the transit of Jupiter or Guru, as we talk about. Right now, we've all grown with this whole concept of astrology and then kind of playing with it more as a pastime to read our weekly predictions rather than kind of understanding it at some level as a crossover of fairly deep science and empirical coincidences or patterns, right, of repetition of environment. So it's one of the interesting things. There are stories around this. So Pushkaram is a celebration or an event that happens during the transit period as it moves from one constellation or one Rashi to another, right? And that happens every year at a particular period. So this year it was November 12th or 13th onwards, 14 days. But it is then supposed to be celebrated with that particular Rashi's river, right? And you're supposed to take a holy bath during that period. In fact, during the entire period, every day there is a specific aspect of that holiness that you kind of engage with. And the bath has extra added spiritual significance. And this is something that was revived in the last few years, with the group, with Periyava's blessings, and it's actively conducted. But the interesting thing is there are so many stories associated with it. And one of the powerful stories, and I go back to Dr. Badri and my conversation about mythology, right? Having science coded in some form to simplify for us to understand. In the past, everybody again joked about the fact that, having a bath in the river, and that particular river of that particular Rasi, A, what is the relevance and significance, and B, what is it going to do that special time? Increasingly, there is body of evidence, scientific evidence, that actually shows that during that period of those 13, 14 days of the transit, right? If you go back to the story, if I was talking about Brahmaputra Pushkara, it's Bhagirathi and the, coming from the kind of river concept, this time was Tungabhadra. There is a very discernible increase in electron activity or electromagnetic activity in that area during that period. So we say that the rishis, munis, the devas, everybody come and take a holy dip, and therefore it's good for you, right? It does, and there's a particular day they say it is good for diseases, and there's a particular day it's good for certain other practices. But there is a discernible scientific link to the fact that the electromagnetic activity in that particular river, in that period, is heightened. So there has to be, going back to the fundamental discussion, if our body is, more than 2/3 water, our earth is more than 2/3 water, every, nucleus or every particular particle is that format. And if we are impacted, if Earth is impacted by the lunar cycles, then everything around that has that 2/3 combination is impacted mentally, spiritually, physically. Then there has to be a correlation to that movement of the planets and the impact of the total entropic state. I'm just bringing it back to the point. There has to be some disturbance that has got created by that motion, and they are basically correlating the scientific implications of that and potential benefits. So that is where I want to leave it. I mean, it has been personally a very revealing journey as we make these connections. I did not make it till I was there for 12 days last time and experienced the power of the river Brahmaputra and the entire ecosystem of gods around there. But thanks, Bharat, for giving that opportunity to clarify the power and significance of the rivers and the various stories associated with them. This is just one of them.
Thank you, sir. And I want to probably ask Badri. So from your readings and your reflections on any particular Mandrigal, importance of rivers that sir has mentioned, or any other. I think he has talked about Kaveri in a very, I've at least heard from experiences that he had mentioned Kaveri in a lot of occasions. So if you could share something that you read.
I wish I had the photographic memory to rattle off all the cited portions, but unfortunately, the only things I can recall are the number of jnanis, or the elevated souls who have occupied the earth around the Kaveri river, is to be noted. That there's something very significant about that river, that people of such elevated stature have all chosen to live around that particular river. Taking Mama's approach, so forget the spirituality aspect, forget what ritual associated with it. Just like from a utilitarian standpoint, we find that rivers are important for civilizations to thrive. So rivers are fundamental for the existence of civilization. Civilization live and die by rivers drying out. And there are some are controversial, some are clarified. Indus Valley, Saraswati River, and all of those are which are mentioned and not. So, without getting into the details of the controversies, rivers form a fundamental part for human beings to survive. And in that one aspect itself, we owe a huge debt to rivers. I think Simon sir definitely noted that defiling rivers is pabi, and a person who does that would be considered a pabi. But just thinking about rivers and relating it to the Nandavanam Kaingariyam from before, and taking the overall view of Bhutaranam. So Bhuta, we say Panchabhutam. So rather than just, so why is Nandavanam a Bhutam exactly? So it's a very intricate connection if we think about it. So you might also be familiar with an organization which is trying to rally for rivers and planting trees as a way to regenerate rivers. And the physics or the science behind that is to the trees naturally absorb things from the atmosphere, and through capillary action are capable of regenerating rivers. And rivers are since they are very critical to existence, planting more trees, not necessarily Nandavanam, because Mama has noted that Nandavanam is not any planting any trees. It is a very a garden of a certain level of purity. But I just wanted to explore how the Nandavanam and the planting of trees simultaneously satisfies many bhutas in one go. So the trees that are planted in an Nandavanam have a divine purpose. The flowers, whatever it bears, serves the Devarinam. So we are able to offer it to the gods and through many ways, and we satisfy Devarinam in one way. The fact that Mama said, which Sivan sir has said elaborately, that if you exist in that area, if you live and if you can care for those trees in a Nandavanam, which are a specific set of trees, they naturally purify the air in that particular area. And therefore, they are supporting the Vayu Bhutam. So the whatever is there in that particular area, the air gets purified. And as Mama has observed, with the planting of bad trees, the ground gets spoiled, the air also gets spoiled. With good trees, with pure trees, the ground is enriched, the air is also enriched. So Prithvi Bhutam is also enriched by the use of the proper trees in the Nandavanam. So, in a sense, why Nandavanam? So, just a little aside, I'm sorry, taking more time. So, this Govinda Dikshidhar is a phenomenal figure. He has done so much of dharmic activities. So many temples have been renovated, Padithura is built, and he was an unbelievable scholar with knowledge of Samudraka Lakshana, Jyotisha, Mantra Shastram, and he was a minister at a very young age to the kingdom. Such a man of so much of dharmic activities, he asks these two mystical divine entities who come from Yamaloka, are they talking of me there? And he is told that this is like one thing that is left behind. You do not have, you have not completed the Nandavana Kaingari. But Sir is not inconsistent anywhere. So at some point he has noted that Moksha Logam is only attained by Mahans. And we talk of all these interchangeably. We say Devalogam, Swargalogam, Naragalogam, Yamalogam, all those we use interchangeably, but Sir is specific about who goes where, Mukti Logam, Moksha Logam, and all those things. So only Mahans reach Moksha Logam, and that is why I refer to your presentation where you said that reduction of disorder. We can think of humans climbing the ladder that Sir has mentioned as a slow reduction in disorder. Whether it's happening outside or not, intrinsically we are cleansing ourselves, we are reducing our disorder, improving the order. And at the level of Mahan is when you attain moksha. That was the step that Govinda Dikshidhar was at. He was, Sir says, he was a Deva Viveki, then he becomes a Deva Sadhu, and he's on the threshold of becoming a Mahan, and they tell him that this part is left off. And then he goes and does this Tiruvadai Marudur Govindapuram Kaingaryam, and then he becomes a Mahan and he goes to moksha. So, in a sense, why this is so valuable? Because it is simultaneously purifying the air. Now, if scientifically we are told go and purify the air, can we figure out what composition that chemical substance should be that it can actually promote the health of all people unanimously, without any side effects? We would not know. But by just planting these trees, we are creating air which is pure, and that would not come to our scientific minds, or right now at least we do not know how to create that.
Scalability idea.
Scalability as well. And just from our knowledge, like will one thing be good for everybody? We will not know. It might work for some people, it might not work for so. But these areas, they are simultaneously, the Nandavanams are satisfying the Deva Ranam, they are satisfying the Prithvi, they are satisfying the Vayu, and in a way, trees, the Vriksham, the Sthala Vrikshams are held in great reverence, and all of these Vrikshams are catering to rivers, and rivers are foundations of civilizations. If we protect our rivers, we live. If we do not protect our rivers, we will perish. That is the rule of nature. That's it. There is, you can sit and argue till the cows come home. Nothing will change. You have to protect your rivers. For that simple benefit, you need to, that Rinam, you need not be as Karthik ji has had a much higher level of experience, but you don't need that level of experience. Just think logically, you need to do it. That's it. That's my perspective.
Yeah, Badri, I just want to take up a very interesting facet and kind of push the conversation just for 30 seconds more. What you said struck something in my mind, and I'm sure our viewers are also thinking similarly. You know, you talked about the fact that that opened up and it touched so many facets of Rinam, right? But it also did something else, because in the story that you described, many of the other entropic changes of our own thought processes affect us, right? They help us come to a state of more balance or more faith or more kind of at peace. But in some ways, the Nandavanam example, right, triggered my mind that it is possibly the most unselfish ecological, social, societal, universal contribution as against being personal and individual. And you know, you kind of said in that story that that was the break from him being kind of a seer and a saint to actually opening up the moksha angle, which is that he suddenly became kind of contributory much wider for everything. Right? And I know you talked about the various temples he renovated and stuff, but to me, that was a very interesting trigger, because all through in various facets, whether it is our scriptures or the Gita or everywhere else, we talk about that facet of saying, at what point do we stop with everything being what's in it for me, right? And that is a very important difference, right? If you go back to the fundamental story of the Asuras and the Devas, and someone has written saying Yagyam, and Namah Shivaya includes that, and it's part of us. If you think of when they go to Prajapati and say, we also do yagyas and devas do yagyas, but they get all the boons and we don't. And there is a story which says, so let me, why don't they say we are as pious as devoted? Why are we not getting it, right? And the story as it goes is that Prajapati says, okay, how do I prove it? I mean, there is not enough faith and devotion, is what I think. So he said, no, give us a test and we will prove it. And the test that's given is that he basically says, all of you, right, Devas and Asuras, sit there, and we're going to serve you a full plate of banana leaf full of food. But you have to eat it without bending your elbow, right? And the food has to be finished. So everybody sits together and starts thinking, and the Asuras are struggling. And what the Devas do, and there are two versions of the story. One says that they sit around, and one says that they sit across each other. Whichever way, fundamentally, they feed another person. Therefore, they don't bend the elbow, right? And in that, there is a very deep concept about, again, wanting to do it socially or inclusively or wider than yourself, than to think of everything about what's in it for me. And to me, you opened that question and that thought process very beautifully through it. I just want to acknowledge it and pass it back to Bharat, but it just kind of did something to me personally as I was listening to you. Thank you.
I can add one more thing. Badri Sonadala about the Nandavanam, he is beautifully mentioned about all the renums is being covered. Ana na solumbodhu the Nandavanam anudiya significance saar sonnadu adu appadi na solliten. I can relate these two examples of mine and Badri. நான் சொன்னது அந்த காலத்துல இருக்க ரிஷிகள் சொன்ன மாதிரி இதெல்லாம் நல்லது அப்படின்னு சொல்லியாச்சு. பத்ரி அதை சயின்டிபிக்கா இப்ப ப்ரூவ் பண்ணியாச்சு. எனக்கு தெரியாது சயின்டிபிக்கா ப்ரூவ் பண்றதுக்கு, அதனால நான் அப்படியே சொன்னேன். பட் நம்ம மகரிஷிகளுக்கு தே நோ சயின்டிபிக்கலி, தே நோ சயின்ஸ் அண்ட் எவ்ரிதிங் தே நோ, பட் தே டிடன்ட் டெல் அஸ் வாட் இஸ் தி சயின்ஸ் பிஹைண்ட் தட். பிகாஸ் அந்த நேரத்துல அது அவசியம் இல்லை. சொன்னாலே புரிஞ்சுப்பா, சொன்னா அதை அக்செப்ட் பண்ணிப்பா. அதனால அவ சயின்ஸை பத்தி சொல்லல, நல்லதை சொன்னா. இப்ப பத்ரி அதை எப்படி எக்ஸ்பிளைன் பண்ணாரோ அது மாதிரி த ஏன்ஷியன்ட் ஆஃப் தாட்டையும் இப்ப பத்ரி சொன்னதையும் கனெக்ட் பண்ணோம்னா இன் அவர் டிஸ்கஷன் இட் செல்ஃப் இட் ஹஸ் கம் அவுட் தி ஏன்ஷியன்ட் தாட் அண்ட் தி சயின்ஸ், இல்லையா?
Absolutely. Thank you. Live demonstration of what we started the session with.
Exactly.
So I wanted to switch topics.
ஒன்னு சொல்லணும். அந்த ஜலத்தை பத்தி சொல்லும் பொழுது அதே மாதிரி நம்ம கார்த்தி சொன்னார், புஷ்கரத்துக்கு போயிட்டு வந்தது எல்லாம். ஒரே ஒரு தாட் எனக்கு வந்தது, என்னன்னா நான் எப்பயோ படிச்சேன், ஐ திங்க் ஐ எம் ரைட், H2O சொல்லுவா இல்லையா வாட்டருக்கு கெமிஸ்ட்ரியில, இஃப் ஐ எம் ரைட். ஸோ எனி வாட்டர் இஸ் H2O. இப்போ ஆத்துல வர இந்த டேப் வாட்டர் இஸ் ஆல்சோ H2O, கங்கா வாட்டர் இஸ் ஆல்சோ H2O. ஏன் இது வச்சா வித்தின் a வீக் புழு வருது? கங்கா வாட்டர் ஹண்ட்ரட்ஸ் ஆஃப் டேஸ் இல்லை ஹண்ட்ரட்ஸ் ஆஃப் இயர்ஸ் ஆனா கூட புழு வருது இல்லை, ரெண்டு H2O தானே. தி ரிஷிஸ் தே ஆர் ஏபிள் டு அண்டர்ஸ்டாண்ட் there is something special in that H2O than this H2O. So give that credit to that rishis. There is something different. Ganga is something different. அதை கண்டுபிடிச்சாரு. கங்கா it is not தெய்வம், it is not something leave alone. But that H2O is not getting a pulu when our tap water is getting this H2O is getting a pulu within a week. So give that credit to that rishis. That is very important. That is honest approach, Ilya. Yes, sir.
So thank you, Amma. I wanted to bring this back to another aspect of Bhutaranam, which is actually very emotionally, spiritually close to our hearts, which is Go Seva. So நிறைய ரெஃபரன்சஸ் இதை பத்தி நிறைய இடங்கள்ல இருக்கு. அண்ட் எஸ்பெஷலி தெய்வத்தின் குரல்ல the amount of டைம் அண்ட் ரிசோர்சஸ் பெரியவா ஸ்பெண்ட் இன் டாக்கிங் அபவுட் இட் வந்து ஃபினாமினலா இருக்கு. அதாவது ஒரே ஒரு ஸ்டேட்மெண்ட், அதாவது கவ் இஸ் ஆர் நேஷனல் வெல்த் அப்படிங்கறத பெரியவா வந்து ஒரே அடியா அதை கிளாரிஃபை பண்ணிட்டு, அதோட அதாவது அது பால் கொடுத்தாலும் கொடுக்கலனாலும் அது இருக்கிறதே நமக்கு வந்து வெல்த். அது லாட் ஆஃப் அதர் பெனிஃபிட்ஸ் த்ரூ இட். அதை பத்தி டீடைல்டா டிஸ்கஸ் பண்ணிக்கலாம். அதை தவிர ஸோ இது நிறைய கவோட பெனிஃபிட்ஸ் நம்ம டிஃபரெண்ட் சோர்சஸ் மூலமா நம்ம எல்லாருமே த வியூவர்ஸ் as well as the panelists we have heard about it and we know. But Periva, as always, took very practical approach towards what can we do today. This is a wealth and இதை ரிணத்தோட கனெக்ட் பண்ணி இதை நம்ம வந்து எப்படி ப்ராக்டிக்கலா நம்ம இந்த கோசேவாவை பண்ணலாம் அப்படிங்கிறதுக்கு ஒரு 2 விஷயம் சொல்லியிருக்கா. அதுல ஐ டோன்ட் வாண்ட் டு டேக் த சஸ்பென்ஸ் அவுட். ஐ வாண்ட் மாமா டு டாக் அபவுட் தட். ஒன்ன சொல்லிடுறேன், இன்னொன்னு மாமா பர்சனலா இன்வால்வ் பண்ணிருக்கேன் இதுல. ஸோ டியூரிங் யுவர் யூத் டேஸ் அதை பத்தி கொஞ்சம் வி வாண்டட் யூ டு ஷேர். அண்ட் அது உங்களுக்கு பர்சனலா இன் ரெடியூசிங் த என்ட்ரோபி எப்படி ஹெல்ப் பண்ணித்தணும் நீங்க நிறைய ஃபோரம்ல ஷேர் பண்ணிருக்கேன். அதையும் நீங்க பேசணும்னு கேட்டுக்கிறேன். அதுக்கு முன்னாடி ஒரு ஃபர்ஸ்ட் சஜஷன் தட் பெரியவா ஹேட் செட் which we can also incorporate most of us today is எல்லாருக்கும் ஒரு விதமா ஏதான ஒரு கார்டன் நம்மளோட வீட்டுல இருக்கு. அண்ட் அந்த கார்டன்ல ஒரு பார்ட் ஷுட் பி டெடிகேட்டட் ஃபார் கவுஸ், growing grass or அகத்திக்கீரையோ எனிதிங் தட் கவ் ஈட்ஸ் அதை க்ரோ பண்றதுக்கு டெடிகேட் பண்ணணும் வசதி இருக்கிறவா அப்படிங்கிறது வந்து பெரியவா வந்து தெய்வத்தின் குரல்ல சொல்லியிருக்கா. அண்ட் அதை வந்து அதை பண்ணி லோக்கல்லா நமக்கு கவுஸுக்கு அதை கொண்டு போய் கொடுக்கணும், அந்த அகத்திக்கீரை பண்ணணும். அண்ட் எஸ்பெஷலி இட்ஸ் அ ப்ராக்டிஸ் ஆன் துவாதசி டே we feed the cows with agatikire and it's part of our monthly practice as well. So இத கேரி அவுட் பண்ணணும். சரி, அது ரொம்ப எக்ஸ்பென்சிவா இருக்குன்னா இன்னொன்னு ரொம்ப இன்எக்ஸ்பென்சிவா ஈஸியா பண்ற ஒரு வேலை இருக்கு அப்படின்னு சொல்லியிருக்கா. அது வந்து மாமா I request you to take over.
Permit me to talk in Tamil because it is very close and very dear subject of mine. Emotionally attached with that subject, இது பசு. ஏன்னா சின்ன வயசுல இருந்து மகாபெரிவா என்னை கூப்பிட்டு பசு மாட்டுக்கு கரிகாத்தோல் போடு அப்படின்னு சொன்னா. ஸோ அதுல இருந்தோ என்னமோ so much attached to that animal. அது அனிமல் சொல்றதுக்கே மனசு வரல. நான் ஒரு நாயையும் அனிமல் சொல்றோம், அதையும் அனிமல் சொல்றோம்னா மனசு வரல. அது வந்து ஹியூமன் ரேஸுக்காக பிரத்யேகமாக படைக்கப்பட்ட ஒரு ஜீவன் அப்படின்னு சிவன் சார் எழுதியிருக்கார். ஜஸ்ட் ஃபார் தி வெல்ஃபேர் ஆஃப் தி ஹியூமன் ரேஸ் அப்படின்னு எழுதியிருக்கார் சிவன் சார். இதை நான் பிரத்யட்சமா பார்த்த ப்ராக்டிக்கல் எக்ஸாம்பிள்ஸ் மட்டும் நான் சொல்றேன். I don't want to go to the emotional aspect because you don't have time to give me. Emotional aspectல நான் பேச ஆரம்பிச்சேன்னா மாச கணக்கா பேசலாம் about பசு. அந்த அளவுக்கான ஒரு வசத்தியான ஒரு கண்டுபிடிப்பு by the divinity. சில எக்ஸாம்பிள் சொல்றேன். 4 கால் ஒரு வால், பால் வெள்ளையா இருந்தா நம்ம பசுமாடுங்கிறோம். நாட் தட். மேட்டூர் சுவாமிகள் சித்தியாகிறதுக்கு ஃபியூ ஹவர்ஸுக்கு முன்னாடி சொன்னார், ஆர்த்திகிட்டையும் சூரியகிட்டையும், தேசி கவ் நாட்டு பசுவை வச்சுண்டு மகாபெரிவா கோவில்ல கோசாலை வைக்கணும் அப்படின்னார். இஃப் யூ டச் தி நாட்டு பசு, யூ ட்ரை தட். I have experienced that. If you touch that நாட்டு பசு, ஜிகின்னு அப்படியே உடம்பு ஃபுல்லா சிலுக்கும். You can see that. அப்படியே உடம்பு ஃபுல்லா அப்படியே சிலுக்கும். ஜெர்சிய போய் என்ன பண்ணாலும் தட்டினாலும் அடிச்சாலும் ஒண்ணும் பண்ணாலும் ஒண்ணும் இருக்காது, அப்படியே இருக்கும். Lot of difference. But we are taking only தேசி கவ் மில்க். இந்த தடவை சிவன் சாருடைய ப்ரோக்ராம் போது தேசி கவ் மில்க் வந்ததுன்னா டம்ளரா வாங்கி நாங்க குடிச்சோம். அவ்வளோ டேஸ்டா இருக்கு. There is a difference. 100% டிஃபரன்ஸ். நான் ஸ்பிரிச்சுவல் ஆஸ்பெக்டுக்கே போல, நார்மல் ஆஸ்பெக்ட் போறேன். அந்த பால் எடுத்து இஃப் யூ யூஸ் தட் அண்ட் தயிரை யூஸ் பண்ணி அந்த நெய்யை யூஸ் பண்ணா யூ கேன் see the difference in any other milk, any other curd, any other butter or ghee. அது மட்டும் இல்ல, as I told you, when I was with a very close relation of mine, went to the village. அந்த கேன்சர் லீஷன் இருந்தது. கவ் யூரின் எடுத்து டெய்லி மார்னிங் அதை குடிக்கிறதுனோம்னா அப்படியே எரி. Then I told her it is nothing but radiation treatment. Don't worry. You underwent radiation once during your first attack. This is the second attack. Radiation treatment, you do it again. To the surprise, I told you it was completely eradicated through cow urine. அதே மாதிரி ஹோலி கேன்சர்னு ஒரு புக் இருக்கு. எவரிபடி ஷுட் ரீட் தட் புக். வைத்யா அப்படிங்கிறவர், he has written that book. He is from US. He was given 6 months time to die. He was given a chance to live for 6 months அப்படி சொல்லலாம், and select his place where he has to die. அந்த அளவுக்கு இருந்தவர், he survived only because of cow அந்த ட்ரீட்மெண்ட்ல. இதே மாதிரி I am even now I am advocating lot of cancer patients. After you go for chemotherapy, you go for whatever treatment, but do not stop there. You go and take the cow urine therapy clinic treatment. That is very important. அது அவ்வளோ பெரிய விஷயம் இருக்கு பசுல. அது மட்டும் இல்லை, I tell you, when you go and talk to her, not only she listens, she responds. அதெல்லாம் எக்ஸ்பீரியன்ஸ் ஆனவாளால தான் அதை புரிஞ்சிக்கவே முடியும். மற்றது எல்லாமே இது எப்படி இருக்கும்னா, ஒரு கதை சொல்றோம், கதை கேட்கிறோம்னு தான் இருக்கும். யூ கேன் கோ அண்ட் டாக் டு ஹர். அதுல ஐ கேன் டெல் யூ ஒன் எக்ஸாம்பிள். ஒரு ஓனர் ஆஃப் தி கவ், அந்த ஹவுஸ் ஓனர், he did not see the cow for a week or so. அந்த வீட்டில் இருக்கக்கூடிய somebody else, they gave the food for the cow. அதுக்கு ஏதோ கொடுத்துட்டு இருந்தார். After third day or fourth day, she stopped giving the stopped taking anything. உடனே that maid went to this Malik and complained, sir, பசு சாப்பிட மாட்டேங்கிறது அப்படின்னு. He came and patted and realized his mistake. ஏதோ சோத்த போட்டா திங்குறோம்னா நம்ம மாதிரி இல்லை அந்த பசு. தன்னுடைய எஜமான் தன்னை பார்க்கல அப்படின்னா தான் சாப்பிட மாட்டேங்கிறது. எவ்வளோ in my own eyes I saw one, அது பேர் விஸ்வாஷின்னு பேரு, அந்த பசுவுக்கு பேரு. she is a தார்பார்க்கர். அது ஒரு பிரீடு, தார்பார்க்கருங்கிறது. ஒயிட்டா இருப்பார். I was just standing there. அந்த பால் கறக்கிறவர் he was milking, பால் கறந்துட்டு இருந்தார். அது கொஞ்சம் பால் வரல. இது சரி, அது கேட்கவே மாட்டேங்கிறது அப்படின்னு ஒரு கத்தினார். பாலே வரல. அப்ப பத்மான்னு ஒரு அம்மா, அங்க வேலை செய்யற அம்மா, she came. This man told her, அம்மா பத்மா, இவ ஒன்னும் பாலே தரமாட்டேங்கிற, இது நீ ஆயுஷன் போய் சனைக்கு விட வேண்டியதான், இது ஒண்ணு now it is over, பால் கொடுக்கிற இந்த சீசன் இஸ் ஓவர்னு. தட் பத்மா டோல், இல்லப்பா ராமா, ஹிஸ் நேம் இஸ் ராமன், ராமா நீ ஏதாவது கத்தினியா? ஃபர்ஸ்ட் கொஸ்டின் ஷி ஆஸ்க்ட், நீ ஏதாவது கத்தினியா அப்படின்னு. ஐ வாஸ் சர்ப்ரைஸ்ட் because she was not the witness when this fellow was shouting. I was the witness. இல்லம்மா அதெல்லாம் ஒண்ணும் இல்லம்மா, நான் ஒண்ணுமே பண்ணலாமா. இல்ல ராமா நீ கத்திருப்ப அப்படின்னு சொன்னா. இல்ல இல்லம்மா நான் அதெல்லாம் ஒண்ணும் பண்ணலாமா அப்படின்னு. Then the Padma went to that Viswakshi and said, என்னடா கத்திட்டானா, கோச்சிக்காதரா, அவனுக்கு தான் தெரியலையே அப்படின்னு தடவி கொடுத்துட்டே இருந்தா. கொடுத்துட்டோம், அவ போய் உட்கார்ந்தா. யூ பிலீவ் மீ, அப்படியே பால் கறக்க ஆரம்பிச்சுடுது. கவ் ஏதோ மிருகம் இல்லை, அது ஒரு சென்டிமெண்ட் மட்டும் இல்லை, அது ஒரு தெய்வ பிறவி. பகவான் ஸ்பெஷலா அதை அமைச்சிருக்காரு இந்த லோகத்துக்கு. அதை நம்ம நமஸ்காரம் பண்ணலாத அளவுக்கு நமக்கு பாக்கியம் இல்லைன்னா கூட அதை ப்ராப்பரா யூட்டிலைஸ் பண்றதுக்கு தெரிஞ்சா போதும். when பெரியவா called me and told me, கரியா தோல் கொண்டு பசுமாட்டுக்கெல்லாம் கொடு அப்படின்னு சொன்னேன். I was so excited. ஜாலியா இருந்தது. உடனே I went to known houses, ஒரு 10 வீட்டுக்கு போனேன். I went to 10 houses of my friend, very close friends. I collected the கரிகாத்தூள். கரிகாத்தூள்னா இந்த வெஜிடபிள்ஸ்னுடைய வேஸ்ட். அல்லது எடுத்துன்னா I used to go to தேனாம்பாக்கம் for 2 years for every Saturday. அந்த பெரியவா ஒன்று என்னை கூப்பிடுவா. அதெல்லாம் எவ்வளோ ஆனந்தமான நாட்கள். அந்த அழுகி போன கரிகாத்தோலை வச்சுட்டு இருப்பேன், ஓரமா போய் நிற்பேன். பெரியவா என்னமோ நான் பெருசா இருந்தோம், வைர வைடூரியங்கள் எடுத்துன்னு வந்திருக்கிற மாதிரி என்ன ஒன்னே அப்படியே கூப்பிடுவா, வா 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 அப்படின்பா. அப்படியே ஒரே ஆனந்தமா இருக்கும். அந்த கிருஷ்ணர் போன உடனே யமுனை வழி விட்டா மாதிரி அங்க இருக்கிறவாள்லாம் வழி விடுவா. நான் அப்படியே பெரிய ராஜா மாதிரி அப்படி அந்த அழுகி போன கரிகாத்தோலை தூக்கின்னு அப்படி முன்னாடி போவேன். திஸ் another one aspect. இதுல என்ன பெரிய கிரேட்னா, எனக்கு தெரிஞ்ச வீடு எல்லா வீட்டுக்கும் நான் போயிருக்கேன். ஒன்லி தெரிஞ்ச வீடு, ஒன்லி வெரி வெரி க்ளோஸ் ஃப்ரெண்ட்ஸ் ஆஃப் மைண்ட் ஆர் ரிலேஷன்ஸ். அண்ட் யூஸ் டு கோ டு தட் ஹவுஸ் அண்ட் ஆஸ்க் தெம், மாமி சிவராம் வந்திருக்கேன், கரிகாத்தோல் வேணும் அப்படின்னு. யூ நோ வாட் ஹேப்பன்? இந்த என்ட்ரோபிலாம் இப்ப பேசுறமே மண்டேல அப்படியே வெடிச்சிடுற மாதிரி இருக்கும். அப்பதான் அந்த சினிமா ஒண்ணு வந்தது, எதிர் நீச்சல்னு. நாகேஷ் அதுல நடிச்சிருக்கார். நாகேஷ் வந்து மாமி மாது வந்திருக்கேன் அப்படிம்பார். அதே மாதிரி எனக்கு இருக்கும், மாமி சிவராம் வந்திருக்கேன். அச்சோ பெரியவா பிச்சை எடுக்க விட்டாளே. இத்தனைக்கு தெரிஞ்ச வீடு. அதுலயும் அந்த மாமி உள்ளுக்குள்ள இருந்து வரும்போது, இதோ வரேன்பா ஒரு 2 நிமிஷம் நில்லு அப்படின்னா, அப்படியே இந்த 2 நிமிஷம் 2 யுகம் மாதிரி இருக்கும். அந்த ஈகோ எப்படி அடிபட்டதுங்கிறது இட் இஸ் இம்பாசிபிள் டு எக்ஸ்பிளைன். என்ன மாதிரி ஒரு பார்ன் ஈகோயிஸ்டிக் பர்சனை பெரியவா எவ்வளவு அழகா அப்படியே போட்டு செதுக்கினானா இட் இஸ் இம்பாசிபிள். இந்த ஈகோவை போக 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 இந்த இப்ப சொல்றதுன்னா என்ட்ரோபின்னு சொல்லிக்கலாம். அது அப்படியே நல்லிஃபை ஆக்க வச்சாரு இந்த கரிகாத்தோலை வாங்கினதுலதான். அதுக்கு அந்த பசுமாடு தான் காரணம். அதுக்கு அந்த மகானுடைய அனுகிரகம் காரணம். இட் இஸ் நத்திங் பட் we are all blessed where we can talk about கோமாதா. இத மாடுன்னு சொன்னாலும் எனக்கெல்லாம் வலிக்கும். இப்ப வள்ளலார் பத்தி சொன்னாரு, வாடிய பயிரை கண்ட போதெல்லாம் வாடினேன்னு. எனக்கு ஒரு பசுமாட்டை யாராவது ஒருத்தர் வாயால திட்டினால என்னால தாங்கவே தாங்காது. இட் இஸ் அ டிவைன் இன்கார்னேஷன் ஃபார் தி சொசைட்டி. நமக்காக பண்ணியிருக்காரு பகவான். நாம அதை காப்பாற்ற வேண்டாமா? நம்ம அதுக்கு வணக்கம் சொல்ல வேண்டாமா? நம்ம ஒன்னும் பூ போட்டு இது பண்ண வேண்டாம், வொர்ஷிப் பண்ண வேண்டாம். அட்லீஸ்ட் அதனுடைய பெனிஃபிட்டுக்காகவாது. அந்த யூரின் அவ்வளவு கேன்சரை சரி பண்றது, அதனுடைய பிரசன்ஸ் நமக்கு அவ்வளவு தூரம், அந்த ஸ்மெல் இருக்கே, அந்த ஸ்மெல் அவ்வளவு தூரம் நமக்கு வந்து பியூரிஃபை பண்றது நம்மளுடைய இன்டர்னல் ஆர்கன்ஸ. ஸோ அட்லீஸ்ட் ஃபார் அவர் செல்ஃபிஷ்னஸ் அந்த பசுவை நம்ம காப்பாற்றணும். That's all. I think I have taken a lot of time. Sorry.
No, Mama, that is personal experiences that make the relatability come alive, right? There is a lot that we can do which is theoretical, but theoretical doesn't engage anyone, neither amongst us four nor the larger group that is commenting. It is the personal experience that allows us to kind of start thinking about it, reflecting on it, and then bringing it to the connections. You said something very powerful. You talked about, that experience and the touch with humility that it brought to you, because you had to suspend your ego and go and beg. While you were doing it for someone else, it was a Periva, but still it kind of changed your perspective and brought humility. So in that experience, multiple things happened. Not just one thing happened. Not only did you build that connection and that touch with Gomata, but you built so many other facets. Before we move out of this topic, I do want to call Badri in, but I want to say that we are at just 5 minutes away from closing today. So I know there is a very powerful topic still pending on Manava Rinam. So we will come back next week to continue that. But I just wanted to ask Badri for his context on this and then provide my closing comments with just one color that I want to provide from Shivaraman Mama's perspective. Badri, Dr. Badri, please, your perspective on this.
I think after what Mama spoke, anything that is said will have lower reception. But of the points, just 1 or 2 points that I think when I think of the cow, and I think it has been reiterated in many places, forget the divine aspect, beneficial aspects are there. But when you talk of this low disorder state, can you conceive of any other system? So when we say low disorder, a man can do something to reduce order in one system. But why does entropy keep on increasing? It is because he will create entropy in the other system, and that total net sum will always increase. But when I think of the cow, it is nothing from it that comes that actually is not usable. It is such a level of orderliness that from taking milk and all the derivatives from that towards urine, towards dung, and that dung is actually what is saving the land. The Prithvi Irinam, we have ravaged the soil after massive, we have done all the green revolution, and we have suck the life out of the ground. And what is the only thing that saves it? It is the cow dung. So again, these are all so beautifully linked that the cow is the only system that can neutralize all the things. Nothing it does has a negative
that is very beautifully said. You actually
yeah.
gave me the segue to the facet that I was actually going to pull and leave it open for next time. We talked about, flora, fauna, water. We talked about the various forms of nature. We talked about Gomata. But in many ways, Gomata and Bhumata, right, are kind of the debts that we don't recognize. And one of the spiritual questions that's always kind of in my head, we talk about science and things that we've done. We've kind of looked up and beyond, and we've gone millions of miles above. We've had the escape velocity and understood how to get out of the gravitational force. We've done a phenomenal amount of things, and we feel good about looking out. But just like in the physical sense, we haven't been able to look within. We haven't gone, more than a few miles in, whether it is surface or whether it is water. We still don't know what's there to discover within on the Bhumata. We don't know what describes the power of what's circling in, that it can do the revolution and the rotation and do it perfectly and provide on top and maintain. There is science, but there is so limited science even there. And in very similar ways, what bothers me many times, and the question in my head is, it is same challenge that we have as human beings. We are always looking outwards. We discover outside. Our quests are external. Our benchmarks are external. Our measures are external. Our dreams are external. We actually fail to look within, and our ability to go within is so limited. And isn't that amazing that whether it be human or spiritual quest or the scientific quest, the ability to go in is so limited still. And I want to kind of go back to the Gomata as we open this session next time, but it's a question that has been, sitting in my head, and the kind of connection layers that we are talking about. And I don't know if anyone of you has a perspective on that, or our viewers do. Please do share. We will take a couple of minutes more to get this question perspectives, and then open the topic from here next time. Bharat, I know you want to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted a little bit of a closing personal remark. So when you had started the session, you had said, as scientists, we acknowledge our predecessors. And it kindled a memory in my mind. So when I was writing my thesis, my PhD thesis, there is a section for acknowledgement. And and of course, it comes naturally to me. At least I should put it in words that I'm indebted to Sri MahaPeriyava for everything that has been blessed to me, right? Like, and I'd written that in my thesis document, and I acknowledged with gratitude to Sri MahaPeriyava. And my advisor had written back asking, "Why do you want to do this?" And my question and my response was, if not, who else? So it came to my mind automatically, and I had to write one long essay about why to justify to him. But the first immediate reaction was, if not, who else? And so today, and again and again, that is resurfacing every time we speak about this. And these two sessions so far have been our little way of paying gratitude to things that he stood by in thoughts and action, and he wanted us to take up. And I think from Mama's, that emotional sharing, I think it's something that maybe I will try my best to follow. Like, maybe dedicate a piece of land in the garden for cow, and as well as if we could save the vegetable waste every day for our Manimandapam's Goshala. And if we all could pledge and do that as a collection, and provide it to Gomata, who is an integral part of our life, maybe that is a little way that I can contribute to that gratitude. So
that's very beautiful and personal, Bharat. And I want to close it by bringing back to that the opening discussion we had, saying what's that bridge between the science and the faith, right? So there's a very famous story. I'm hoping it's true, but it's a famous story, and therefore, as with many other stories, you give it its due credit. The story about Thomas Edison and a train travel that he was taking, and he was that person he was sitting next to. Thomas Edison was reading Bible, and the person next to him talked about, you know, what do you do? And he said, I'm a scientist. And he said, how can you be a scientist and reading about Bible and stuff and whatever? And they had that conversation, and he kind of finally said, I'm Thomas Alva Edison. And he said, okay, can I come and visit you? And he comes and visits Edison in his laboratory. And as he visits, he sees this beautiful model of the whole universe, right? The solar system, beautifully done there. And he asks Edison, saying, so, how did you make it? How much time did you need to make it? How did you construct it? What did you use to get such a beautiful model ready? And it seems Thomas Edison, Alva Edison said, oh, it just happened one fine day. It just appeared one fine day. And this guy said, no, I mean, you must be joking. This can't just appear. I mean, it has to have been made. I mean, you must have used materials. You must have taken time. He said, but you thought our current solar system one fine day appeared, right? There is no God, right? That is what your perception was. So it's a very interesting thing that even the scientific guru of modern times recognize and beautifully explain to someone who, in some ways, you could call an atheist, but a non-believer in the power of supernatural beyond us. It does not have to be a human form that we are ascribing to, but the power of what runs this universe and the acknowledgement of that and humility that he had. So I want to close the loop by saying even the most amazing scientists, right, would like some anchor to describe what they know and what they don't know and where it comes from, because not all of us have answers to everything that we are looking for. In fact, we have very few. So on that note, I want to say thank you again to all four of you, I mean, all three of you and the various participants. I know tremendous amount of feedback. I try to capture the comments into the conversation, but we'll bring more of it next week. And thanks again to MahaPeriyava and the Manimandapam group for providing us this platform to have this conversation and giving us an opportunity to kind of stroke our curiosity and reflections and bring it all together for each of our personal lives. Thank you again. Jai Jai Shankara, Hara Hara Shankara.